All right, well, welcome to Total Water Use Calculated Savings. Just like we have energy models, energy ratings, and we can know and forecast utilities for new constructions, renovations for housing projects, we can also somewhat start to forecast water bills and water savings, such in the same way as well. And so that's what we're going to be focused on in this session is one individual tool and then some other resources for you focused on water savings, especially as it applies to achieving LEED certification, but still being useful whether you're doing LEED or another green program or something else. Now, the benefits of reducing water, if you need to have those discussions before spending time on calculating savings, well, that's important because you need to know what are the benefits. And saving water is a very important but often overlooked aspect of residential green building. It usually comes as an afterthought. And so what are the benefits? They're increasing water bills are going up all over the country, especially in many core cities, and especially for people who are financially struggling. So we want to lower water bills. We want to slow down droughts. Droughts are coming no matter what, but we can slow down the effects of them by reducing water with very simple design strategies. And we want to reduce aquifer drawdowns, where people are running out of water in certain areas in their aquifers, which is happening all over the world. And of course, as there are droughts and aquifer drawdowns, there are water restrictions put in place. So we want to, prevent those kinds of things from happening. So that's ultimately the benefit. So before we get into it, we want to say a huge thanks to our Platinum Plus sponsor, Ream, who is looking at water a little bit differently than necessarily savings. But when we save hot water, we also save water on water conservation. And they're doing that through their heat pump water heater systems. These heat pumps can get up to about 400% efficiency. They have two different devices. One is a 240 volt, which has backup resistant electric heating in it that uses a lot of energy, but might be needed. And then they also have their 120 volt, which is very easy, plug and play, swaps out a standard gas appliance very simply. So these use energy out of the air. They're heat pump systems with refrigerant, and then they capture that energy up to 400% efficiency. So there are tax credits available for them up through the end of 2025 and tax rebates potentially, or rebates available through state programs as well. So check them out over at greenhomeinstitute.org/REAMHPWH. Now, before we get started, I wanted to remind you that Green Home Institute is a nonprofit with a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. Today, I will be your moderator. My name is Brett Little. Actually, I'm going to be the speaker today. Usually I'm the moderator, but I will also be the speaker. And I am the education manager here at the Green Home Institute with 15 years of experience in residential green building consultation, in certification as a green rater, and educating others on how to do these things. Now, this course is approved for multiple continuing education units, including our Certified Green Home Professional designation under the water pillar, so just one pillar for this one. And AIA Health, Welfare, and Safety may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. So let's get into it. Total water use calculated savings. Most of the green programs started out with a set of prescriptive requirements or opportunities based on the water flow device flow rates. However, under performance programs, like under the LEED Water Efficiency Total Water Usage Credit, you are meeting requirements and given points based on water usage projections of water savings. Usually under the prescriptive checklist, you're looking at toilet gallons per flush and then gallons per minute of bathroom aerators and shower heads. And to have all three of them ideally be WaterSense certified within the prescriptive pathway. Then looking for Energy Star certified clothes washers and dishwashers to get your points there. Note that Energy Star dishwashers are only required in LEED as a potential item in the energy and atmosphere section, as opposed to the water section for prescriptive. So essentially, LEED gets you points for water savings based on baselines, such as at least 1.28 gallon per flush toilets, 1.75 to 2 gallons, depending on the version of LEED, per minute on the shower head, and then 1.5 gallon per minute on the bathroom aerators, but not looking at the kitchen aerators in the prescriptive, but we'll get into those. Bonus for version 4.1 single family, which is available across the globe, that rewards points all the way down to 0.8 gallons per flush on the toilets. Now, I've been using those kinds of toilets for over a decade, and they work great as long as the toilet is vacuum-assisted technology. So performance is about choice and choosing your flow rates as opposed to being locked into the flow rates set by the program for each device. Now, why might you want to do this over a prescription? What would be some considerations to be able to choose your water flows rather than having them be prescribed to you? So here's an example. Number one, you have a high-end client who wants very high flow showers for comfort. So what they can do instead is save water and meet their green certification requirements by offsetting with a more water efficient landscape and using Energy Star water-based appliances. Example two, we see often in the affordable housing sector that we do consultations for. They will get very nervous about low flow toilets and do not want to risk any kind of issues with those. And so they may put the higher flow toilets in and then offset the usage with a lower flowing shower head and aerators in the bathroom. There are many examples, in addition to clients who may want to use high water intensity Kentucky bluegrass, as well as other high water intensity shrubs, certain types of flowers that they like that might use a lot of water. And so again, you could have all the water use on the inside, but then focus your conservation to offset it on the outside. So whether you're going to LEED or another green program, or just wanting to ensure the best water efficiency for your project, the LEED Water Performance Calculator is an easy-to-use tool to do just that. In LEED, the water calculator is used to get points under the water efficiency or WE total water usage section. And for projects using different flow rates or want to maximize efficiency, this is the best option. The LEED water reduction calculator for residential projects resides within the whole project workbook under LEED version 4 multifamily and LEED version 4 single family as a standalone tab. But there is also a standalone water reduction calculator, and you can use that just for evaluating water performance on your project, or if you're outside of the United States and Canada, and you're doing an international LEED v4.1 multifamily project, the calculator is a standalone tool that is not part of a workbook. In our case, we're going to go ahead and use, in the handout we had given you, the V4 multifamily as part of the larger workbook, and that, again, has been included within your handouts. So the LEED certification program requires you do the outdoor water usage if you're going to take points for the indoor water within the total water use performance pathway. We do not have time in this session to cover the outdoor water usage, but we have a previous LEED APH-CEU session that we've done that covers a walkthrough of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency WaterSense Outdoor Water Budget tool. In this, we look at the size of the landscape area. We look at the plant types, whether they use irrigation or not, and whether that irrigation is water efficient and up to the EPA's WaterSense standards. This data is then transposed into the LEED checklist on the baseline for the site, and if there's a normal landscape based on the actual landscape water requirements. So baseline is what a regular site would use. Landscape water requirements is what your more efficient site would use. And one thing to note is that LEED does not require any kind of outdoor irrigation systems. They're not required. They are just required to be efficient if you do use them. Now, the first thing to do is to understand the baseline water usage of each device as far as the efficiency starting point. Each device listed has an assumption of the worst or typical code performing device. And if you select more efficient devices for your project, then each of these items you will get water savings based on those assumptions. If you install a worse performing or otherwise higher flowing system device in an existing building improvement project with worse or if you have an existing building project with worse performing than the baselines over here, then that will count as a negative water savings and count against you, though it would never give you negative LEED points as those don't exist. These flow rates are all assumed at 60 psi, or that's the ideal water pressure of a building in a home. Except for shower heads, those get assumed at an 80% psi. So more pressure equal higher flows in all devices, and lower pressure equal lower flows. LEED single family and our Green Star program requires that you do testing to get the pressure within 60 to 80% psi, though some of the high performance plumbing experts really advise you want to be at that 80% psi, which again, most of those issues of comfort occur in the shower at 80% psi. But that won't come up in the calculations. Those are just required part of the testing. Okay, so now we're getting the workbook open here. Again, that was one of your handouts, your downloads, if you want to have that on hand. But let's pretend for our case study today that we're in the early design stage for a multifamily housing project, trying to determine the best flow rates and fixtures. Now, if you're more into single family, that's fine. Basically, everything we're going to go through here today is more complicated for multifamily, more simpler for single family. So if you learn the complicated way, you'll be able to do it much easier going through this workbook to help on a single family. Now, typically in the early design landscaping of a project, when you're just in the design stage of the building, the landscaping is really a far off thought and sometimes not even determined until the project construction is completed, and then they start drafting up the landscape plans, after construction. So we're going to go ahead and leave that landscaping section blank, which you'll see in your handout, and we will come back to that. Now, again, thinking multifamily here, for non-unit space, it's required in mixed-use buildings or buildings with community rooms that you must download the LEED commercial water calculator. So it's a separate calculator for commercial buildings, and fill that out separately based on the particular space, use type, such as, is it a community room? Is it staff bathrooms? Is it a mixed use space, which gets a little more complicated, such as retail, office, restaurant, school? Now, for the sake of simplicity, we're going to go ahead and skip this today and assume our case study, our multifamily building, has 0 water use features that are outside of the residential units, but you'll need it and you'll probably want it to make the most informed water saving design decisions for your project if it has non-residential space water use devices. So the project example we're using is going to be a mixed income, and it's going to have 10 efficiency units, which are 0 bedrooms, 1 bedroom, 2-bedroom family, which will be a 2-bedroom. And these efficiency 1 and 2, we're going to consider those the tax credit affordable housing subsidized income qualified units, these 3 here. But this is a mixed income building, so our 3-bedroom is going to be sold at market rate, non-subsidized. So you can see here the estimated number of occupants. LEED is trying to guess the water usage and savings based on the occupant count. At any time you do a building occupant estimate, whether it be for code or energy modeling, ANSI standards, it's always bedrooms plus 1. is what our occupant assumptions are. So that's how we got to that 150 occupants here in a 50-unit building. Clearly, a unit will perform better or worse in water savings if the occupant count is lower or higher. This also plays out with energy efficiency if you have more occupants or less occupants than what the energy rating is anticipated. But I will tell you with water, it is much more pronounced. So if you're doing this exercise, you could hack the workbook and try to get the occupant count to what you know it truly will be. But that's only for your own internal records. When you're submitting it for green certification, you must always do bedrooms plus one. But you can do a little bit of both just to see, like, what your actual water usage might be. So let's take a quick scan here of the water tab and the inputs for each of these devices. So you can scroll down essentially below. If you got the checklist open, the workbook open, you're following along, you can essentially scroll down below this to get to the next section. But before you get there, it's important to know that for each device, it is a good practice to eventually put in the brand, product name, product number to really help you stay organized for the lead rater, the reviewer, and for your own sake of organization. The other thing to note is for all devices besides the toilet seen here, you should be working in junction with the qualified professional or energy rater to make sure your selected flow rates and energy ratings on your devices are also in line with what the energy rater is putting into the energy models. If you're not already having your energy rater fill this whole thing out for you anyway. And it's also important to know that, again, if you reduce your water savings, you'll improve your energy bill. You'll reduce your energy bills as well, besides, again, with toilets, and you'll improve your lead energy points. So again, this is just an example of a spec. If you have these early in the design stage, they're helpful because you can grab this information and start putting it into the workbook. All right, so moving down, our first one will be showers. So here you can see for showers, we put in the product information, and then we have two different shower types. We're going to put in the higher flowing type. We'll get into that. We have a higher flowing and a lower flowing one. The other thing to know is we have something called the TSV, or the thermostatic shutoff valve. This triggers a hot water shower standby and is a handy shower accessory that stops empty showers from running on and on by auto pausing the flow when hot water arrives. It reduces water usage, and if you turn it on and off and walk away, it'll bring it down. So we're going to go ahead and say that our project has a TSV on the high flow rates. So you can see it goes from a 3 gallon per minute stamped rating to a 2.76 stamped rating. Now scroll down. So if you have a product using all the same fixtures, you can normally just select all units. But if you have just one change, like we do here, you have to break all the units out into each bedroom type. And so we assigned to the 3-bedroom market rate higher end project, of course, the higher flow showers. And we note when we look at the construction plans that there are 2 bathrooms in those units. So it is important to remember and note, because if each bathroom, you must either double up on the same fixture, or note if it had different fixture types for each bathroom, you have to note those 2 different fixture types as well. Additionally, for showers, if the shower stall has 2 shower heads, you need to double the number of fixtures here. This is similar to having 2 separate bathrooms. So if you had 1 bathroom but 2 shower heads, it would be designed the same way here, if they're the same. All right, now let's move down to faucets. For faucets, this is an area of a key difference between prescriptive and performance. You cannot get points for kitchen faucets in the prescriptive pathway in the vast majority of the green programs. It's only performance. but they will count against you if they have a high flow. Here, we note that the kitchen faucets in each unit are going to be 1.8 gallons per minute, going to be the same. And so you can see that would be the same down here. Um, but for bathrooms, we're going to have a differentiation between the flow rates and the devices between the market rate units and the income qualified units. And the reason for that is a lot of times in higher end projects, they'll want, more stylish looking devices. And not always, but on average, we find that the nicer looking devices, tend to have higher flow rates. They don't tend to have lower flowing options. It's not always the case, and the aerators can be changed, but that just in general tends to be what we find. All right, now scroll down. If you're following along in the handout in the Excel file, in the lead workbook on the performance calculator tab, you will see that the toilets are typically the highest water users in terms of total water usage, and in particular, indoor water usage. This is an area where you can find your biggest points of opportunity and largest area for saving money and water. However, unlike all other indoor water users, it does not save any energy, at least not directly in the energy rating, and cannot lower your energy rating. Now, toilets that use a dual flush can quickly be evaluated within the workbook based on inputting the high and the low values and then calculating the average use of the flush. Now, again, you can see we put the brand number, the model number, and everything again to stay organized. And then we transcribed that dual flush down here below. So again, you can see we put in the brand number, the model, product, all of that here, and we installed the higher flow units in the affordable housing as the developer was concerned about the low flow in the income qualified units. So the higher end 1.6 gallons here, again, those don't qualify for prescriptive points in LEED or most green building programs because that's as high flow as you can get now by code. However, we installed in this case study the dual flush toilets in the market rate projects, assuming they preferred a more water efficient toilet, and it's associated with dual flush, which many people associate automatically dual flush with lowest flowing performance. But we'll show you a little bit later here why that may not always be the case. All right, moving on to clothes washer. If you scroll down again in your workbook a little bit lower there under the toilets in the water performance tab, a clothes washer can be a little more complicated for LEED. There are some questions you need to ask, especially in multifamily. Does the occupant supply their own, or is it being supplied at construction? Does each unit have its own washer and dryer, or is it a common area setup? Or is there some kind of hybrid here between the two of those things going on in multifamily? In this case, as with many projects, we have limited information in the early design stage. We do not know, we do know that there is no common space laundry, so that's good. But we're unsure whether the landlord and owner is providing the occupants with their own facilities or not. And many times they just don't know yet either. Do they have the budget to do it? They don't know early in this design stage, and that's okay. If there was a common space, we could select all units. Right? So if it's a common area washer, we would select all units. No matter how many devices are in that common area, there could be 1, 2, or 10,000, we would still select all units because that common space would serve all units. In this case, we're going to select all units and we're going to assume the worst, that everyone is bringing in their own. And when we assume that, we have to assume it won't be Energy Star, it'll be a top loading probably.
And it could be even worse than the baseline, but you're at least allowed to just assume the baseline of 9.5 water factor, which is how one rates flows within clothes washers. So that's what our assumption is going to be. 50 people bringing in um, baseline water using devices. Could be better, could be worse. That's the assumption we make when we have not enough information. All right. Last but not least, or maybe it is the least, you'll see. Um, Dishwashers. When no dishwasher is installed, we assume hand washing, which is less efficient and proven to be in line with the water usage of a non-Energy Star certified dishwasher. Note that for LEED version 4.1 single family and version 4 multifamily, you must select one device in each unit under the Energy and Atmosphere section to be Energy Star certified. It can be from a list of three, the refrigerator, the dishwasher, or the clothes washer. Meaning, if one or the other two are not certified, you must install the Energy Star dishwasher. In this case, in most cases, the refrigerator is Energy Star certified. It's very difficult not to find that. So in the case of our project example here, the owner decided not to supply the dishwashers to the affordable housing units to keep costs down. So you can see the difference here. Baseline, no dishwashers, 6.5 gallons per cycle, which is how you measure flow rates in dishwashers. And then we've got a product here that is Energy Star certified at a 4 gallon per cycle in the 3 bedroom. But we'll say in their case, because it's a larger family, they decided to be nice and supply the 2 bedrooms, even though those are income qualified with the with the dishwashers. Um, so that's going to be what our setup is for this particular project. So let's take a look, keep scrolling down at our end results and our end numbers. You can see at the top of the middle column that this is the projected design flow rates in the gallons per month by device. And in total, next to the column to the right is the baseline for a non-sustainable project. And then on the right are the total savings accrued as a result of that. Below that, you can see the total indoor water versus the outdoor water and the total percent savings, which is used for your LEED points. Um, Now, if you, so I guess looking at all of this, looking at these savings, again, this is where you're at, and this is where your baseline is, and this is what you've saved based on our inputs. What jumps out to you here? What surprises you here? We'd love to hear from you and get your thoughts on that.
Okay, so if you're looking at and you have the LEED workbook downloaded, you can tab over to the water efficiency index or the water efficiency tab, so WE. And what you'll note is that it will put the savings over here, 16.79%. And if you note the little list we have broken out for you, you can't round up. You're not allowed to round up. And so you have to be at 20% to score 3 points here, which I'll get into why that's important. Again, if you're using version 4.1 multifamily, non-US, non-Canada, this won't do this for you. You got to do it all on your own. Um, so I've got the wrong slide here. So one other point oh, here we go. So one of the things I wanted to note here is that under the LEED version 4 multifamily, you need 3 points in water usage to comply with the baseline requirements. So you're not compliant here. And then under most green programs, you need about 10 to 20% in water savings just at your baseline level. So you might be kind of compliant depending on the program here based on what our inputs are to do that. But from a general sustainability standpoint, maybe these savings can be a bit admirable, but you may want to increase them, especially for qualified households if they're paying their own water bills and they're financially struggling. That will help them save on rising water and utility bills. So let's look at what we can do. So there's a lot of different things we could do here to go after points. Sometimes early in the design stage, this will motivate the developers to engage their landscape architects early, so you could try to accumulate those points throughout the landscaping route. We aren't going to go into the outdoor water budget, but in this training, but you may view our supplemental training that we've sent you the link for and we have shared below uh, at a later time in order to claim water savings from this tool. But otherwise, in order for you to use this lead tool, you do have to have your outdoor water savings figured out at some point, no matter whether you plan a more sustainable landscaping or not. In the case of this project, you would need to have an outdoor water savings of at least 30%. But there's another caveat. You need to at least be having 100,000 gallons of water a year in the to be forecasted as the baseline of the site before you can even start saving. So here we made an estimate. So, so for example, if the site only called for 10,000 and we reduced to 7,000, it wouldn't give you enough of an impact on your lead points. Large multi-family developments with a lot of acreage and especially larger single-family projects with big site acreages probably can reach this. And especially if you're in drier climates, but otherwise, you may not have enough here to use the outdoor water usage to achieve the additional points. So here you can see at the bottom, if this were the case, if you had a site that was supposed to use 100,000, we reduced it to 70,000 through efficient irrigation and landscaping. Now you would reach your goal of 20% savings, which gets you in compliant with LEED version 4. But most project teams will increase LEED points and water savings first by looking at their indoor water usage. Now, part of this is just part of an exercise in playing with the tool and seeing what works. The other part of this is probably taking a very strategic and knowledgeable approach. And to do that, it's good to have understanding about what water savings are. And so we have other classes like our Certified Green Home Professional designation where we go in depth into the water pillar. We have other courses we've done that focus on water conservation. And so that can help you give the knowledge and feel more confident to be able to guide your projects like these on making these selections to achieve, better results within their project teams, within their projects. But just considering all the options here, let's take a look at, what kind of water savings we could achieve based on some of the examples we typically see play out within projects. At a high level, you might have a consideration to hone in on the clothes washer. If you remember, we just kind of assumed the worst on the clothes washers, right? We had no idea people might bring their own. We don't know what we're going to do. So now we're going to focus on this on the design stage. And it's a great time to bring this conversation up. Like, hey, you're not meeting your green points. You're not getting a high level of water savings. Why don't we focus on those clothes washers and see if we could furnish the homes before you rent them or lease them or sell them with Energy Star certified clothes washers. And then avoid people bringing in all sorts of crazy things that could also have other ramifications. So as with everything, when it comes to green building and LEED, it's all interconnected. We call it the 5 pillars of green building. There's always these inherent things that tie together. So this is an opportune time to think about the requirements for clothes washers that stretch into durability and into the materials and resource section, as they call it in LEED. Because if the developer is not supplying their own clothes washers, then they either have to pre-install expensive drain pans or pre-install steel braided hoses, which reduce leakage compared to rubber hoses by 90%. So again, it's a little silly to go in and pre-install all of these hoses and then assume someone is going to hook their washer up to those hoses and not tear them out and then put the rubber hose in, which is going to increase the chances of leak and damage and mold and mildew to the project. So this is a great time to kind of bring that to the conversation. Hey, let's just put the clothes washers in. Let's make sure you've got the steel braided hoses, or if you need, if you feel better, the drain pan, which also meets the lead MR requirement. So let's pretend you've convinced the owner and developer team to do this and to install the Energy Star 1. I'd assume at this point you have a product that's now a front-loading device. And what I do is I keep the old one there just in case we end up having to revert back to it, just for sake of organization. But we'll pop the new one in here, and then we'll go down and add it into all units and drop it in here. So you can make that change right now if you're following along and see what kind of impact it has. Typically, the front-loading clothes washers are going to be more water efficient. And then you want to have in your occupant training manual the occupants to understand how to maintain these front-loading ones so they don't get mold and mildew in the lip. You kind of have to leave it open and then make sure it uses the self-cleaning mechanism. So remember, our old number was about 16% water savings and 2 points, and it didn't qualify for LEED. But look what happened when we put in the new clothes washer. Now we're at 25%, nearly 26% water savings. And if you look at our point breakdowns here, 25% qualifies you for 4 points. So now, just with the clothes washers alone being changed on the project, we qualify for LEED V4. We're 25%. We qualify for a lot of other green programs and standards, and we've got some extra bonus points for the project. So if you were following along, go ahead and wipe that out and revert back here, because let's say you couldn't convince them to use the clothes washer. Okay, let's find a different pathway, developer. How can we do this? All right. So instead, if you remember, the project did not plan on supplying the dishwashers to the income qualified residents, at least not in the 0 and 1 bedrooms. But maybe by leveraging local statewide Inflation Reduction Act rebates or other incentives, or you have some leftover money in the project, which certainly never happens anymore, you could instead extend the Energy Star washers to the income qualified residents as well. So let's see what happens when we input that data in the clothes washer, and we just in this case you could just make it all units if you wanted, but don't do that because we still want to have you follow along with a couple other examples. But you can see if you put it all in here, then you're just going to go from, barely 17% to, a little more barely 17% savings. So by doing the clothes washers, you can see in the modeling we did, you are not compliant. You're not at your 20%. You're not where you need to be. And like we said, dishwashers have such a little impact on water savings that you probably should know going into it. It probably won't work. Why waste my time on it? So let's look at toilets. Like I said, toilets, they're super, the toilets are kind of our #1 water using device. They now make super water efficient toilets that work really well, especially with vacuum assisted technology, which should be especially installed in older rehabs with cast iron pipes and long runs to the drains. These ensure that the flush is done more effectively compared to gravity or pressure assist. And I recall in the recent past a lot of pressure assist toilets having lots of recalls and multiple failures across them. Now, one toilet that I've been using for over a decade, and lots of other affordable housing multifamily developers we work with use it, is the 0.8 gallon. So that's 0.8 gallons per flush toilets. They don't have the complexity of the dual flush, and so you can show the developers the results of the studies, convince them to switch this out on the 3-bedroom anyway, if they're still nervous about the income qualified residents.
And what will be the results? So again, we've added this third one here down at 0.8. 0.8. Remember, it's a 2-bedroom, so you got to update it or 2-bathroom, you got to update it in both bathrooms. And when you do that, what you're going to find is 19.62% savings. So we're still not at our 20% we need. We're so close. You're not allowed to round up and lead. We're very, very close. So you say, you go back to the developer and say, hey, we're so close. Why don't you just make your life easy and spec the same product on every single unit? And then you only have to order one. Maybe it'll cut costs. Maybe they'll give you a deal for volume discounting. Who knows? So go ahead in the workbook and fill out all of the zero point 0.8 gallon per flush toilets here across the entire units. Now you see we've jumped up from the 19% over here to 23%, surpassing our goal of 20. And that gives us 3 points. So that's hitting our goal for LEED version 4 certification and, makes it just super simple because now you're just using one toilet. You got rid of all the dual flush stuff. You got rid of the pressure and gravity assistance stuff that, never tends to work, especially on older buildings. And it just made it easy and you're able to hit the goal that way.
Now, let's imagine, I'm not going to make you do this right now, but you can go back and do it. Now, let's imagine, as often happens in LEED and residential green certification, we as sustainable, doing our sustainable consultations, whatever it might be, developers need to find more water savings to hit certain goals, targets, water costs, requirements. And so let's imagine we applied all of these different changes. So updating the Energy Star clothes washers in all the units and supplying those, putting in the Energy Star dishwashers in every single unit, improving the sustainable landscape with a 30% water savings, again, however that might come to fruition, and reducing water usage and switching to 0.8 gallons per flush toilets. What if we did all of those things we just discussed instead of one or each? Now look, you'll see here that that would result in a savings of 32% water usage, and that would score us over on the workbook in the WE tab 5 points within the LEED rating system. So for other project types, you wouldn't be filling out this particular workbook any differently, other than for the single family one, if it's just one home. If this was single family townhomes or a large scale scattered site subdivision of individual single family homes, you'd be filling it out the exact same way. And you would submit those under one batch tab. If you can imagine the same home devices were distributed across all the individual townhomes or single family units, just as one large multifamily project, you'd be filling this out exactly the same. The only difference is if you're submitting this in batches and there are different flow rates and devices, then you would need to split all this up across each different certification portfolio. And if you're submitting like the homes within batches. Now in multifamily, you can't do that. And again, just as a reminder, for multifamily version 4.1 outside of the United States and Canada, you simply fill out the workbook, the standalone water workbook, and insert the information in the scorecard based on the water savings. So like I said, I promised you we would look at some of the other green programs real briefly. Here is what the final updated project, and there's a link to this as well in the Google Sheet workbook if you want to review that and follow along in that as well. In this case, for our Green Star Home Certification Program, here's what this is the 32% savings, right? This is this result here if we did all of the things together that we discussed in the update. Same project, same example, we're just saying if it's Green Star. In this case, what we do for Green Star is we do an average of the multifamily water flow rates to give the whole score of the whole building. Or you could score out each individual specific unit type as well if you wanted to do that and generate a different water score on each one. You can see the column here just above the score. That's where you input the averages for each flow type and then zeroing out the leaks, assuming you're testing and inspecting for no leaks, which is something different than that doesn't exist on the LEED workbook. If you're using the performance pathway, Green Star Homes requires at least a home water score of 2 to comply. And then higher levels give you higher levels of certification. In this case, a 3.5 home water score would qualify this home for Green Star Home Silver certification. And you can note the 35% water savings here being forecasted for the project, very close to our 32% forecast for LEED, not far off. The LEED one might be a bit more accurate, to be fair, because it's dialed in into the unit by unit instead of a larger overall number. One other thing to note for the showers is that Green Star Homes does not offer that TSV, that auto shutoff. So that doesn't show up here as an option to input that information. But we would likely allow you to use that from the lead calculator tool if you wanted to put in the new number based on those results if you had a TSV, but I never see those things installed in any project. All right. In the Enterprise Green program, which is also one of the other documents we gave you as a handout as an example, you can see if we're doing this exact same project, we'd only get a 20% water savings. But the good news is that's enough to comply with their requirements, no extra points, but it complies with their requirements, and it's mandatory in their program because they don't have a prescriptive pathway. One of the biggest reasons that the savings are less than the 23% is that they don't have an outdoor water savings calculations that gets input into this. So this is all indoor only. You can't do outdoor. The other difference is you must use the worst flowing device and not a weighted average like LEED. So you can see our worst flowing shower head is here is 3. And then the other unique thing about Enterprise is for washers and dishwashers, you must also know the capacity of the units, so how big they are, and that gets factored in and entered in. Unlike both in Green Star or LEED, we're not looking at those things. And then finally, and I'm missing a slide here, and that's very sad. But finally, we have our, if you were looking at the LEED thing, you would have noted that they have gray water and they have rainwater catchment. And so if you have gray water or rainwater within your project, you can find a credible calculation that might forecast and estimate what kind of water usage and savings you would accumulate and be able to back that information up in documentation. And then that data can actually be input right into the tool calculator here. Again, you have based on its water usage per month forecast or water savings offset by the gray water or rainwater. So again, there's no standardization of doing that, not at least through LEED. So they're just looking for formal documentation that could otherwise sound like it seems, within reason of what you're suggesting. But with that being said, and that's where I'm sad I've somehow lost a slide. I don't know where it went. There are alternative water savings performance programs out there, and we've done trainings and webinars on each of them. And I will send links out to those ahead since I completely somehow deleted the slide. But those are programs that will more accurately capture rainwater and gray water calculations within a total water score. So those include the HERS index rating, HERS H2O, which generates a water score within the energy ratings that are otherwise required for LEED. Otherwise, there's our good friends over at the Green Builder Coalition who have the water rating, the water efficiency rating score, or WERS, that also generates that kind of information. Or you have the National Green Building Standard Home Innovations Lab, WRI, Water Rating Index, which can also, again, incorporate gray water, rainwater, and give you a total water score. The other thing that's nice about these more in-depth rating systems is they're looking at all sorts of other things like pools, spas, hot wa bathroom flows, other water using devices like humidifiers. They even look at the plumbing because you can structure your plumbing in a more sustainable way that will also reduce water waste. So that's included in those calculations that you won't see in the lead one or the Nash or the Enterprise or our Green Star one. So if you really want to hone in on your water usage, again, those three programs, which we'll send out a link to, WERS index rating, WRI, water rating index, or the HERS H2O program, all great tools to do an evaluation with if you really want to hone in. Now, the other key differences, those are mystery boxes. So you have to be a water rater to get access to most of those tools. Whereas this lead tool, our Green Star tool, these are all user friendly. You can access them. They're free to use, and they're not a mystery box. They're all available to you um, to access. So with that, we are going to conclude. Again, I'm going to stick around for some questions and answering questions. I'll be around for that. But as a reminder, yes, this session is recorded, and you can find it later on in the next week or so, or you can go to our YouTube channel right now, follow the link, click subscribe, and then ring the notification bell, and you'll get an instant update when it's available to rewatch or share. For those of you watching this in the future, take your quiz with an 80% passing rate to receive your continuing ed. As long as those of you who are here live today have been here for the entire CEU approved hour, take the survey that comes up. I'd love to hear from you, and check your spam for certs at gutenbergcerts.com to receive your certificate. And as always, a huge thanks to our board of directors, our volunteers, our executive director, Jose Reyna, our nearly 500 members. We're trying so hard to get there. If you haven't subscribed as a member yet, please do. We're trying to hit it for our 25th year anniversary this year. We want to get to 500 by the end of the year. We're getting close, but we need your help if you love what we do and support our work. And speaking of support, a huge thanks to our sponsors like Rheem, Build Equinox, Timber HP, Panasonic, Tamarack. They're on our website and they have more sustainable products that are helping you meet and beat the LEED standards and achieve other certification goals. So with that, I'm going to pull open the Q&A. Another question is, does an instant tankless water heater save more water than tanks? That's a good question. So that's where you would want to use, one of those more in-depth water performance calculators that I mentioned, like HERS H2O or our good friends at the Water Efficiency Rating System. It may have some impact on whether you're using tank or tankless. Obviously, if you've got a big tank of water sitting there, that's water being wasted. So I think they do use. But the other thing is if you're using a heat pump water heater, like like we've talked about many times, those can be used, that tank water can be used on a time of use rating and be used as a distributed energy resource to be called upon by utility to reduce energy. So there are other benefits of storing that water in a tank. Also, tankless, they just cost more money and they don't save very much energy because tank water heaters never use that much water to begin with. So they're just not great things to do. But I do think they use a little less water in fairness, and that would probably show up in those more robust rating systems. Should standard chemicals be added to city water, be removed be filtering for irrigation of lawns? Yeah, that's a good question. I would attend one of the outdoor landscaping sessions we've done or will plan to do. I don't know the answer to that. That's a great question as well, and not necessarily relevant to water savings though at this point. Are there any great water reclaim systems for homes that can recycle some of the water for further water use? Um, I think we did a session on gray water, or yeah, we've done a couple sessions, so you can check our website out on some different gray water application devices on our YouTube channel to get that. So the next question is, how would you do the washing machine section if there are some units, let's say the market rate, that had washing machines in the units, but the affordable units had all shared laundry? That's a really good question. And I do remember running into that situation before. And I think what we do then is, and again, if you've got a specific project, and just as a reminder, if you all are looking at doing a green project, we can do some of these consultations. We can help with certification. We can help navigate the project, get it registered, whether it's LEED or something else. So I can send out a link on that if you want to get our consultations on a specific example. But just at a high level here, I'll say that, yeah, in the event that you have a um, kind of a split issue where, yeah, you've got some of the like affordable housing folks using the common area water, and then you've got the market rate ones kind of getting their own supplied or being brought in. I believe what you would do is you would assign whatever, if there's 10, 20, 30, 40, it wouldn't be that many. It'd probably be like five, depending on the size of the project. The five common area would be assigned to, let me share my screen here so I can show you what I'm talking about. The five common area laundry hookups would be assigned to the particular well, let's use a better example here. Like, let's say we're not looking at dishwashers right now. Let's pretend we're looking at the clothes washers. So you would assign these three, the income qualified, efficiency one and two, to just the baseline dishwasher. Um, well, that would create a problem because it would still say, no, that wouldn't create a problem. Yes, you would assign it to just the baseline or whatever is in the common space, and then you would assign the other one to the higher end project. And that's, I believe, what you would do. But again, check with your rater, your provider, or whoever the person you're working with. So, would it be broken down by unit? Yeah. So yeah, that would be the way to do it. So the other question that came in here is, if we're talking about conservation, why is landscape irrigation even allowed? That's a good question, and that I think it's a good point. So all of the green building programs, including our own, allow for irrigation, even water sense certification. Um, so um, the only one the only one that doesn't factor in outdoor irrigation is enterprise green. It doesn't mean they don't. And so when you do outdoor landscape, when you do an irrigation system with enterprise green, they mandate you comply with the EPA's water set certification in the design. So essentially what's going on here, for the person who asked that question, is the green programs, I think, recognize that people are going to do irrigation. So they're going to enforce the higher water sense standards in most cases on them. Otherwise, it's going to cause a high, flow rate usage. But I don't think any green program is prepared to not allow irrigation in the risk that then someone will, back off entirely. In addition, some other programs like the Living Building Challenge, which we didn't talk about here, would require that to come from rainwater or some other recycled water use. So they also wouldn't want to say you can't do landscape irrigation, but that would have to come from a very progressive source of water, we'll say, which would be, rainwater or some kind of gray water recycled, water usage. So. All right. Well, that is the end of our session today. Again, I want to thank, I guess myself. I'm the speaker. I'm used to thanking somebody else. But thanks for all of you for attending. And we will be on with a different speaker, a real other person here to talk to for our ACES Solar Tour as a tour of their own home next week. So. Take care and be well all. Thank you.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.